How's it going?
Not bad.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just give about 2-3 minutes. We're gonna have 2
And
others.
now, can you still see it?
Sorry?
Can you still see it?
Yes, I can still see it.
You can still see
class?
Yes.
Yeah. So we also have a guest today. He's called Edison. Can see he's joined us from Kampala. He's the head of data at NSSF Uganda. EK, you can hear us?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Good. Welcome. Just say hi to the rest.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Kampala is cool today.
There's no rain.
It has been raining, but it has stopped now. It's a bit of sunny.
Okay. Yeah, same here.
Oh.
At least we don't have rains to last 2 days.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So welcome. I think this class is class. Grace, this is class 6 of 8.
I think I lost count at some point.
Yeah, I know.
Especially after we skipped the last 2 Saturdays.
Yeah, we skipped the last 2 Saturdays. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we had that 6 of 8 remaining. But then so we intended to give you at least an overview of how, after doing all the machine learning, how do you deploy them on the web?
Yeah.
At least to give you to give it an aspect of scalability and production. So we've worked with Rogers before. So I don't know whether I've given you access to our platform where we have our machine learning models. I'll just type it here. I'll just type the link on the chat room. And sorry, I missed a word there. Yeah, there you go. And Rogers is the one who built this engine. So maybe Rogers, as a way of starting and as introduce yourselves, you could start by just taking them through this engine and some of the projects we've done before.
Okay.
Over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rogers. I'm a software engineer at Twiga Foods. And I've worked with Tim for about 2 years now. I mean, we've been working together for about 2 years. Yes, so I basically build and design and maintain software. That's what I do on a day-to-day basis. And I have a background in material science. Yeah, that's pretty much about me.
Wow. Thank you.
So about basically deployment of models in my experience. So deploying of models is actually quite very little of the model itself and more of just software engineering and web design and traffic and HTTP and all that. It's really not about the model itself. The model usually is pre-computed and just it's a way to present it to the final user. I'm gonna assume most of you have worked with the previous. I've been in the previous courses and you've basically worked with notebooks and all that. So what we'll basically be doing here is moving from our notebooks to actually getting the model somewhere it can be used by someone. A good example of, say, cases where a model can be used in the real world is probably something like if you look at your phone. So most of you if I'm assuming you use Gmail, so sometimes you get smart replies, which basically just scan through the body of an email and determine what could be the next response to that. So that is an example of machine learning and AI models that have been deployed into production. So that is basically what we'll be doing through this course. And as Tim suggested, we'll just take a brief walkthrough of the platform that he shared. If I'm going too fast, please feel free to let me know, or feel free to ask any questions, interrupt and ask any questions you might have.
Roger,
Yes.
thank you so much for sharing. So some of your projects, have you worked on a project where you are dealing with okay, maybe let me give you my background to give you a foundation of my question.
Okay.
The solutions I create here for the team, it's deal with the processes, more of automation of processes using machine learning to deal with the processes. One, efficiency, but also two, to eliminate people from the process. I'll give you one of the examples. We launched here machine learning for data cleaning. So on that, what I had not thought of is now the way what you are talking about, more of looking at the front end, how I can embed into all the processes, and maybe the element of giving me such notifications here and there. Because what I do, I subject the entire data, I look at the entire our databases, I run, I pick out, it predicts, then I know maybe this statement is supposed to be cleaned or this one is not supposed to be cleaned. But I haven't been looking at it now to the end point of notifications. Have you worked on the project of that nature where you are dealing with a process, automation of the process, but also now trying to put in those finest layers of machine learning?
Hi, so on my day-to-day job, I basically build client-facing solutions, and I'm more in the end journey towards the customer. And part of doing that involves building the backend infrastructure. So for example, in your case, the sort of work that you do is part of the work that would go into what I do to deliver a product. So I guess my answer to your question would be yes.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. Have you worked with like the customer service side section or the customer experience team? More of customer segmentation, more of trying to predict the needs of customers, what are they maybe demanding? Given this condition, what are maybe like it be the demands for the customers here and there?
Yes, that is part of the work that goes into. So for you to actually ship a product end to end, you need to understand what the customer wants. So every now and then I have to basically look at our processes, and if you follow the chain of feedback, whatever the customer wants or what the customer needs gets back to basically the devs, and it's up to you to figure out a way to implement that.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello. Yes. Yes, Rogers.
Did you get me? Is that okay with your? Is that a good answer to your question?
It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
Fine.
Go.
Hello.
Yeah, so Rogers, you can share your screen now and you take them through the APP.predictive analytics.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can see the live simulation, which they can go and try it on their own.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Proof of just a quick disclaimer. When we worked on this with team, we were doing it as a proof of concept, so we never really got back to put in some finishing touches or improve on it to make it much better. I'll just proceed. So basically, we did a couple of modules. Some of the stuff we worked on belonged to customers, so we couldn't really show them publicly. But these are some of the publicly available modules that we worked on. The first one is a module for HR data analysis. So basically, it looked at a data set that had staff information, and it helped HR teams determine when employees would probably churn out. So it helped them predict who might be wanting to leave the company in a few weeks or months. And that it was quite helpful to some of the HR companies. We also looked at something on economic data, which basically looked at a data set that had economic data from a number of countries, and we worked on visualizing that and basically making the data consumable and actionable. We did something on credit rating, which it's part of the work that went into doing credit rating for customers. So from the data set, you're able to determine who you should give a loan to, what someone's credit score is, and a bunch of other analysis. And something else we worked on for a client was a distribution network analysis. So we worked with one of the beer distributors in Nairobi to basically help them analyze their distribution network. And to a question that we've received just a few moments ago, we did something on customer segmentation. So in this place, the model basically it tried to segment customers in a data set into different groups just to determine where to put your customer and which group of customers to focus on. So yes, and then we had customer KPIs. So this was just a data analysis for a bunch of customer related data. And from that, the end user was able to determine how the customers were performing based on a set of KPIs. We did something on stock prediction, which basically, given some data, was able to analyze the trend of certain stocks. So you could be able to tell how a certain stock would move in the future. So for the demo, I'll probably just start with the HR module. Let's download the test file. So we'd probably need to upload the test file that we just downloaded to see how it works. So this is some of the, okay.
Yeah, so Rogers, we can also ask them to do the same on their machines. And
Okay,
then
sure.
they can share the screens also, see what the output. Each of them can pick any random or segment.
Yes, so as you work on it on your end, I hope you can see my screen still. So based on the data we just uploaded for the HR module, we can look at some of the results we got from that. And the first step is just basically an exploratory analysis of the same data. And you can see some of the overview of that. There's a snapshot of that data which shows 2 columns and all the columns that we have in the data set. So basically scrolling down, you can have a feel of what the data looks like and how it's distributed.
Yeah, so you can explain, originally this script was done in Python, and then now the deployment is the software engineering part.
Yes, so this is actually a bit more complex than what we'll start with today. So it involves a client-side application, which is basically what you can see. And then there's a backend application, which does the actual analysis and sends the information to the client for us to display and show to you. So this current backend was written in Python. Initially, it was on notebooks. I'm sure most of you have worked with notebooks. So it's something that was sitting in a notebook, and then we had to now make it available. And to do that, we actually had to make it accessible over the web into in a manner that is actually usable by people. Because I'm guessing you can't go to HR and give them a Jupyter notebook to use. That would be absurd. So as far as HR is concerned, they only need to see what your model does. They don't care how you did the model or where you did it. They probably just want to see the results. And that's why we are looking at deployment. So deployment is a way to actually get your model into the hands of a user.
Sure.
Anyone have any questions so far about this?
Yeah, have you been trying it on your machines as well?
Yes, I tried the one of customer segmentation.
Okay. Yeah, so that one we did for an insurance company to classify the features of different customers. Grace, have you tried any? Fiona, you've been able to catch up?
Sorry. I'm still trying to log in. I need to sign up. I'm signing up and my machine is a bit slow, but I will get there. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Andrew, are you able to log into the system?
Yeah, I'm currently using my phone, but
okay.
Yeah.
You have access to a laptop next to you?
Yeah, I'll just try logging in to my laptop. Yeah.
All right. So Fiona, we mean the APP.predictive analytics, what you're seeing on the screen. The link we shared on the chat.
Hi, I've joined in a bit late. Kindly share it again.
It's the same one that you saw on the same one you saw on the chat. APP.predictive analytics.
The chat here or on WhatsApp?
No, the chat of the Zoom. Rogers has shared it again.
Thank you.
So, Rogers, or maybe Timothy.
Yes.
What happens if maybe parameters have changed and the user needs to also try and put in parameters, see how the model will behave? Do you have the flexibility where maybe you give a code and the person on the back end, or how have you been working with them?
Rogers, you can take on that.
For the sake of this, well, when we built this platform, the code wasn't really open source. It was an internal thing, but then the clients wanted to see the end product. So I guess we can talk to Tim about sharing the code later on. Tim, would that be possible?
Yeah, the Python script, huh?
Actually, it's more like a Python server.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's okay, Edison. That's okay. We can share with you.
So
You want for customer churn?
Yes. What I'm asking now is the customer segmentation.
Yeah.
My question is from notebook. It's here, or you have another more of a staging area before you put here at the end user.
Yeah, Rogers, you understood what he's asking? So it's a conversion.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the move conversion. Where does the conversion take place?
So would it make more sense to sort of, because I assumed everyone is, if we work from the level of no one has probably worked with it, and then we can progress from there. Would that make sense?
Yes. So so you can take note of Edison's question, and then use it.
Yes, and then we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can come back to it. Is that okay?
Yeah. Oh, it's okay.
Yeah. So, but that's the whole idea. We wanted to show you the finished product, so that as we progress on, you can be able to see where we are headed. Yeah. Yeah. So just know at the first stage, you're all proficient in developing Python scripts using notebooks. By the end of the day, you'll be sharing your work with other business users through such platforms. So one of the business users will want to see the work or the models you developed. You'll not be sending to them Python scripts or notebooks. You'll be sharing with them such dashboards where they're able to download or test their own data sets and deploy them on such a virtual platforms. So I think that's the whole idea of this session, is to show you how to deploy them.
Okay, thanks, Tim. So for today, I made a presentation about basically introducing us to the web, considering that having a Python script is just one part of it, but then you need to understand how the web works and how to share information on the web. So basically, we'll be building a web application. Just a quick question before we all get started. Are we all in a position to write some code somewhere? Would that be possible?
Yes, I can.
So for anyone who isn't in a position to do so, you'd probably need an integrated development environment. So it's basically an application to allow you to write code. And on the current screen of our presentation, there's a link to download one of such tools. So it's Visual Studio Code, and it provides an interface for you to write some code. Because we'll be doing a bit of that today. So as we do that, I guess I'll just proceed on to the next slide where we can just understand what the web is. So the web is basically a system of communication where our resources can be shared over the internet. I'm sure we all understand what the internet is. It's this network of interconnected networks and computers all over the world, and it allows us to talk to each other. So the web is it's a communication platform that runs on the internet, and it's how we are able to see web pages. For example, if you're using Zoom on your browser, whatever you're looking at is basically the web. If you're opening Gmail on your computer or you're opening it on some browser somewhere, that is the web. So on the web, resources are identified by URLs, and it's using these URLs that we're able to access content over the internet. So a URL is basically a universal resource locator, and you can think of it as an address. Basically, if you have some houses in a place, if you want to get to a specific house, you need an address. So that's the same on the web. If you need to get to a certain web page, you need an address to that. So for instance, if you need to go to google.com, so google.com is the URL. So that is a unique identifier for, say, Google's web service for searching things. Anyone with a question, feel free to interrupt and ask your question. So on the web, resources are basically transferred through a protocol called HTTP. And HTTP is basically just a set of rules that govern how communication happens on the web. It's a standard. It's not something that, it's not a program you run. It's just a set of rules, like a language that everyone speaks. So if we decide that our addresses have, say, PO box, this and this and this and this, the only way we can understand other addresses is if they follow the same standard. So the standard we use for the web is HTTP, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And you'll be seeing a lot of that when you start hosting your models. Finally, resources are published by something called a web server. A web server is software that you write to actually serve web pages. So for instance, if I go to google.com, so there's a web server running that Google has deployed somewhere that will return whatever I see when I go to google.com. And the software that returns that web page is called a web server. So just to catch up on some of the terms we've used, you can refer to them. So we have Universal Resource Locator, which is a unique address that you use to identify resources on the web. And then we have HTTP, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It's the unspoken word, or basically it's the agreed upon standard that everyone implements so that we can all talk to each other on the web. A web browser is software to basically browse web pages. So if I open Google Chrome or Firefox and type in some URL, I'm using the web browser to browse resources on the web. And finally, a web server, as we've discussed, it's now the software that publishes our web resources. And in this case, our web resource will probably be the results of our model. So we'll need to write and deploy a web server to publish those results. Any questions so far?
Good.
So for us to be able to successfully write web pages and build a web server, we'll need to be conversant with some web technologies. The first one is hypertext markup language. So this is basically the language we use for formatting a web page. For example, if you go to predictive analytics, which we've just seen right now, so whatever you see, how the structure is, we do that with something called HTML. HTML is it's the markup language that we use to basically design the structure of what you see. You can see predictive analytics on the top right corner, and then you can see a list of things. So we use HTML to basically put all those together. And then we have cascading style sheets. In short, we just call it CSS. So CSS determines how we style the web pages. Again, if I refer to predictive analytics, you'll see that there's a green background somewhere. So we use CSS to tell it that make this portion green. And we use basically whatever aspect of styling that you see is done using CSS. If you want to make, if you look at the HR module, you can see it's in a box, and the box looks like it has some shadow. So all that is CSS. We use CSS to determine how the web page looks. And then finally, something else that we probably won't be looking at today is JavaScript. So JavaScript determines how the web page behaves. For example, if you go to predictive analytics and click on anything, whatever happens when you do the click, that is JavaScript. So JavaScript, you tell JavaScript that when I click on this button, I want this to happen. So that is how we achieve interactivity on a web page. So if you combine the three, you actually get a working web page where we have HTML to do the structure and layout, and then we have CSS to determine how it looks, the styles, everything that's visual. And then we have JavaScript to determine the behavior. Any questions so far? Okay, so we'll get started with HTML and basically just look at how HTML looks like and how we write it. So HTML is basically, it's made up of elements, and elements, if an entire HTML page is a single element, and we just have multiple elements inside elements. So we keep doing that until we have a full web page. On the screen currently is an example of an element, which is a paragraph. So the PA that we see is for paragraph, and elements are usually designed in such a manner. They have an opening tag and they have a closing tag. So for example, in this case,
Rogers, can
sorry?
you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I
can hear you.
I no longer see your screen. I don't know if others can see.
Yeah, I can
you
see
guys
it.
see my screen?
I can see it.
I can see it too.
I may need to log out.
Okay, is it? You must have lost connectivity.
I think so, but the voice is.
The voice, yeah.
Now I can see. It's okay.
Now you can see. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So,
right.
All right. So we can continue.
Yes, please.
So what we are looking at is basically the structure of HTML element. And as I was saying, it has an opening tag and a closing tag, and then it has the content in between. So all of that is called an element. And for you to actually make a working web page, we'll write thousands or hundreds or maybe millions of these to basically come up with a web page. Elements have things we call attributes. So attributes have extra information about these elements that we can't put in the content. For example, if you look at our screen currently, so we have the paragraph element, which, as we discussed previously, we use a P to denote that. And the content of the element is my cat is very grumpy. However, the user will see my cat is very grumpy, but we need to give this paragraph other attributes. For example, we need to give this paragraph a name. So those will go in as attributes and not into the content. Say we have paragraphs that have that belong to the same class or they do the same thing. We can give them a class. For example, in this case, we have a class editor node. So that is called an attribute of an element. Questions? Are we good to proceed?
Yes.
All right, and we'll keep going. So just to look at how now the structure of HTML looks like. This is an example of HTML, now the actual code itself. And as you can see, the entire document is wrapped in a single element called HTML. So everything is one single element, but then we keep adding and nesting elements in to design our structure however way we want. So you can see there's HTML, it has the opening tag and the closing tag. And if you've noticed anything curious about the closing tags, they have a slash. So the opening tags don't have the slash, the closing tags have the slash. So that's how you distinguish between an opening tag and a closing tag. And then in between those, the content, you can put in the content. So just to describe a bit of what the structure we just saw. So the first thing, the doc type HTML, it's just you don't need it, but it's something, it's standard. It's standard for writing HTML pages. So back in the day, there used to be multiple versions of HTML. So it was important to just version the kind of document you are using and say this is this version of HTML. But currently, it's pretty standardized. So you always just put in doc type HTML into any HTML document you start writing. That's just pretty standard. And then we have the HTML element, which has both the opening and closing tags. So we use that to wrap the content of an entire page. So that is every other page you write on the web, it has to start with HTML and end with HTML. And then we have the head. The head is another element that we use to basically group all the things we want to put in our web page, but we don't want the user to see them. So these include things like metadata, basically things that allow us to index the web page and search it, everything that we'll need, but the user won't need to see. And then we have the title. I mean, just as the name suggests, it's used to set the title of the web page. So if you look at the current tab that you're looking at, there's a, let me use the zoom one. So the zoom, if you just hover on the tab, you'll see intermediate data science deploying machine learning. So that is the title of the web page, and we use the title element to basically set that. Can we all see that? Finally, we have the body. So again, as the name suggests, that is literally the body of our HTML page. So I wish I had a better way to present this, but let me try. So I'll share my entire screen, and right now I'm sharing my browser. So if you look at it on these tabs, so if I hover on, say, the current tab, whatever you see, the intermediate data science, deploying machine learning, that is the page title. And then whatever we can see here, that is the page body. So everything that you want to put, everything you want the user to see goes into the page body. So that's how we actually get this to be shown on our web browser. And if I try to basically look at the HTML for this web page, just stay with me. So, okay, that's not a good one. Can we do that? So this is us looking at the HTML for the current web page, which is Zoom. So you can see it has HTML like we've seen in the slides, and then we have the head. But then we said head contains everything that we don't want the user to see. Now you can see in the head section, we have the title, intermediate data science, deploying machine learning models, which is literally what we had up there. Let's try edit this to something like predictive analytics. Now, if you look at the title of the page, it's changed to predictive analytics. Hello?
Yes, we can.
Hello? Oh, you can see what I'm doing, right?
Yes, we are together, Rogers. Yes.
Okay, cool. So this is just a basic demonstration of how the web page will work. Analytics. So that's us just editing it in place. So that's the head, and then go to the body. So the body is everything we see, everything you can see on that web page, that goes into body. And like we discussed, it follows just the HTML structure, which is basically a set of elements and other elements inside those elements. So you keep chaining elements. Sometimes you have thousands of them that make up a single web page. So yeah, we have all that. You can go to where this sharing screen has been defined, and as you can see on this line, there's a H3 tag. H3 is a heading, so we have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, depending on the level of. So if you look here, you'll see that there's a tag called H3, and the content is you're sharing the screen. You can just edit that to make it be something else. And I have shared my screen, and you'll see that the web page content has actually changed. So yes, that's HTML and how it works. So back to our presentation. Anyone with a question before we continue? If there are no questions, we'll continue to CSS. So we said HTML does the structure and the layout. CSS does the look, or rather the styling of how the page feels. So that is done with CSS, and CSS is just a rule-based syntax. So for you to define you basically define a set of rules, and when your web page is rendered on a browser, the browser will just follow the rules that you said. So here's an example of a CSS rule. So we have H1, And then we have opening braces. And then we say color red and font size 5 EM. We'll talk about what 5 EM means later. So H1 in this case is called a selector. So it's what we use to identify which part of our page we want to style. And then color red, font size 5 EM are the attributes of that selector. So just a quick way to do that. So we've talked about HTML and we saw that we have a bunch of elements nested and put together. But then how do we add CSS to that HTML document? So one way to do that is we can write our CSS rules in a file, in a separate file, but the file has to end with a .css extension. That's how the browser knows it's a CSS file which contains styles. And if you go with that approach, then we'll have to add it. As you can see, this is actually an element in HTML, the link element. So it's used to link to other external documents. So we can do this to link, say, a style sheet. So in our case, we have a style sheet called styles.css, which we can add to our web page using the link element. Alternatively, we can use the style element, which, again, as we discussed before, it's a HTML element called style, and it tells the browser understands that it contains CSS styles inside the body. So
Hey, Rogers. Rogers, we lost you a bit.
yeah, I think I got disconnected. I'm back.
Sure.
Yeah, anyway, so anyone with a question on how to add CSS to our web page?
So Rogers, there's an ID you had shared initially where they can use to.
Yeah, that was a link to download an ID.
A link, eh?
Yes, it was a link to download an ID, which you can use to
So maybe we
write
can
your own code.
Yeah, we can just check with them if they've downloaded it.
All right.
Maybe
cool.
just so you can share with us your screen
again,
so that you experience it as we move on with the slides.
if anyone needs to download the ID, here's a link.
Are we going to be writing HTML and JS?
I don't think we'll be writing JS for this course. We probably won't want to complicate stuff, but we'll need HTML, so we'll write some of it.
All right, it's because I've opted to use an online editor as opposed to downloading the IDE.
Oh, it's cool. I mean, the ID is just for guys who need an ID. That's what I'll be using for my demo. But you don't need an ID. It just makes the work easy, just for everyone else. So I'll be opening up my IDE just to share with you guys what I have so that we can work together. So what you're currently looking at is my code editor or my IDE, and I'll create a file called index.html. So index.html basically dictates that this is a HTML file because we want to write HTML. So like we said before, traditionally HTML documents start with the doc type line, which it's basically standard for all HTML documents. It doesn't really mean much these days. It used to back in the day. And then we have the HTML tag. So it's an opening tag and it comes with a closing tag of its own. And then inside the HTML tag, that's where everything we write goes into. So first we have the head, which we said it contains everything that we don't want the user to see. So we have the opening tag on line 4, and we have the closing tag for head on line 8. And then we have the body. So body is where everything we want the user to see actually goes into. If you look at line 5, 6, and 7, so that's some of the stuff we don't want the user to see. For example, we defined a character set in line 5. So what this does is it basically tells the browsers what kind of characters we'll be using in this document. And for most written languages, UTF-8 is just the pretty common standard for that. We have other meta information. So most of these just contain metadata on our web page. We don't really need all of this, but the more you work with web pages, you'll begin to understand when to actually include some meta information. For example, when you want your page to someone to be able to search your page online, you can add meta information here that determines the kind of keywords that someone will use to search your web page. So some of these content are used by search engines to just index your page and stuff like that. And then we have the title, which we said is it's the title of our web page. So when we open that page in a browser, that's what we'll see. So we can save this. Just remember where you saved it. So I'll be opening this file in a browser just to see what my HTML looks like. So I'll go to my files, and since I know where I saved my file, I'll just go and find it. It was in projects, and then we have predictive analytics, and there's my index.html. So if you double click on that index.html file, it opens in a browser because it's the browser, your computer is able to identify that it's a HTML document and it should be opened on a browser. So currently our body is empty. So you won't see anything, you'll just see a blank white page. But if you look at the title of the tab, you'll see it's called document, which is exactly what we had written on our title. If I change this to my document and save, and then I have to reload this tab, you'll see that it has changed to my document. So we've basically started out writing our HTML document. I'll pause for questions if anyone has questions, or if anyone is lost. Okay, I guess we can continue. So we'll start by writing something in our body. So let's start. The list of elements are pretty comprehensive. We can't talk about all elements right now, but we can talk of a few that we know. So let's start with the heading, since most documents have a heading, or rather a title. So headings have multiple elements for that. We have multiple levels of headings. There is heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4. It's in that order. So heading 1 is the largest, which basically corresponds to a title in a normal document. So let's make ourselves a heading. So we can have H1. H1 is heading 1. And every time we write an opening tag, we have to correspond with a closing tag for such elements. And as we discussed before, the content goes into the middle of those tags. So we can say this is a title. And save. If you open our document and go to the tab where we've opened our file and reload, you'll see now on the body we have, this is our title. So if we keep doing this for a while, we'll end up with a fancy looking document. Let me just duplicate that all over. So now we have about 20 H1s, which are headings with the same text. If I save and reload, you'll see that I have all those headings. So that's how we fill up, we start composing our document. Just get rid of those. Okay. So we have a heading. It only makes sense that we also do a paragraph. So a paragraph is the tag with the P. Again, we open it and we close it. Then you can say this is a paragraph. If you save and reload, you'll see we have a title and we have a paragraph. I'll just put in some dummy text to make our paragraph long enough. So let's make our paragraph long enough and save. So if we reload, we'll have a title and a long paragraph. So we can keep doing this all day. Just as we design our page, we need to have an idea of how your page will look like, so that you know how to lay it out. If you wanted to add, say, something inside the paragraph, since we said HTML elements can be nested, we just go inside the content for our paragraph and add another tag. Say we want to add bold text. We can use the strong tag. So strong is a tag for basically having emboldened text. So we can have, this is important. If you save and reload, you get this is important. But as you can see, we don't want this is important to be on the same line as our paragraph. So it means we need a new line in between. And to add a new line, we'll also need another tag called HR. So HR is creates a horizontal rule that is basically an empty line. And if you reload, you find that now we have a line. It creates we've basically drawn a straight line, a straight horizontal line just above our strong text. So our page is starting to take shape. If you want to underline our title, well, we could as well add another HR under our title, just to draw a line under our title. You are probably wondering why our HR doesn't have a closing tag. So sub-elements don't really need closing tags. Some elements just work on their own, especially the elements that don't need content to go into them. For example, a line is a line. It doesn't need content to do anything to the line. So we don't need, but if you look at a title needs the body. So we have to write the content in between, and that means we need a closing tag. But for things like lines, we don't need a body for it because it's a line, it's defined. So yeah, so that's why we have some elements that don't have closing tags. Any questions?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
What if you want a line to stop in the middle?
So if we want a line to stop in the middle, now that means we need to split our page. We need to split our page in the middle. And now we'll have to bring in CSS for styling, so that we create two paragraphs, one on the left and one on the right.
Okay.
Like two columns. And on that, we can actually start styling on our document. So like we mentioned when you were looking at the slides, there are three ways to add styles. The first one is you can literally just add it onto the element. For example, if we want this title to be blue, currently our title, everything is black, but say we want our title to be blue. So we can just add an attribute, like we said, elements have attributes, and then we have a style that says color, and then a colon, and then you give it a color, say blue, and save and reload. So now you can see our title is blue. And our paragraph, if say we can style our paragraph as well to, and then give it a width, and then say 50%. So I'm having a difficulty pronouncing your name. It's
Edison.
Eka. Yes. So now onto your question where you asked if you want to make, say, it half a page. So you can see that in the CSS, we've said give our paragraph a style, and for that style, we want the width to be 50%. So 50% is half. So as you can see, we've given the style to the paragraph. So only the text has gone 50%. But if you want even the lines to go 50%, we can remove the style from our paragraph and put it in the body. Let's see how that goes. So if we make our body 50% and we reload, so you see that everything is now half page. Okay, does that answer your question?
Very well.
So the point you're trying to make here is you can play around with these styles, do whatever you want to it, and make it basically design the page as you see fit, or and achieve anything with it. So that was the first way to add CSS. The other way to add CSS is by using the style tag. So we can have style, a tag, and then inside the style tag, now we can add our CSS. And like we said, CSS consists of a selector, which is, for instance, we want to style all H1s. So we'll start with our selector, which is H1, which is heading 1, and then the opening brackets. And then now we can type, say, color. We want the color to be red. We want the background color to be yellow. So now we are defining a set of rules. Like we said, CSS is a rule-based language. So we just define rules that say, anytime you come across a H,
Hello. Hello.
Hi, James. I think we lost Rogers.
Oh,
Yeah, so let's give him time. He must be reconnecting.
Is it the effect of COVID?
No, I think it's just about to start raining. So I'm sure maybe then some network surges.
Oh, Timothy.
Yeah.
Hi, Tim. Zoom keeps knocking me out.
Really? Maybe it's the network. Or do you have a firewall on your machine?
No, my network is fairly stable.
Okay. We've never experienced that, because actually because we use a premium account, it rarely has that. Yeah.
Anyway, I was demonstrating how to add CSS by using the style element.
Ike, you had a question?
Sure where...
No, yeah, I will judge you later.
Yeah.
So we were demonstrating how to style our elements, and in this case we've styled H1 with color red, and we've styled the paragraph with color blue. So if we refresh our document, you'll see the changes. So our title is blue with the background color yellow, and our paragraph is blue with, it's blue and bold. Yeah, it's blue and bold. We can also add border, say border, and give it 2 pixels, solid, black. So in this case, we are defining a border for our paragraph. We are saying, give it a border that is 2 pixels white, and it's solid, and it's black in color. So if we reload, you'll see that our paragraph now has a border around it, a black border. If, say, you want to increase the space inside that paragraph, you can add something called padding. So padding will pad our paragraph with spaces. So we can add, say, padding top. So this will add space into our paragraph, but at the top. So you can say make it 10 pixels. So that will add a space of 10 pixels to our paragraph. So if you reload, you'll see there's some space on our paragraph, but at the top. Let's just make this big enough so we can see it, 100 pixels. And then now you can see there's a 100 pixel space around our paragraph. If you want to add the padding all round, you just get rid of the padding top and say padding. That takes care of all the padding, and maybe make that 50. Save and load. And now you can see our paragraph has space all around. So that was the second way to add CSS styles. Finally, we can create a style sheet, which is just another file called styles.css. So it doesn't matter what you call the style, what you call the style sheet, as long as it ends with .css, it can be recognized as a CSS file. So we need to add the styles.css to our document. So we'll come to the head, which we said contains everything we don't want the user to see. And we add the link tag. So link style sheet, and then href determines where the file is. So in this case, the file is just where at our current position. If you look at the files, the index.html and the styles.css, they lie close together in the same folder. So we just tell it that you can find the styles at styles.css. styles.css. Now we can go ahead and start writing our styles inside this CSS file. So let's say we want to make our page green, all the page. So we need to wrap the body. We need to define a style for the body tag. And as you can see, the body tag wraps the entire CSS, the entire HTML page body. So we tell the body to be background color green, yellow. Now if we save and we reload our HTML document, the page is turned green yellow. You can change that to something like gray. And our document is yellow, is gray now. So that's basically how we play around with HTML and CSS just to present our page, to make our page presentable, however way we want to do that. I'll just stop there for questions, if anyone has any.
One.
Yes.
We have the 3 methods you have showed us. If you put contradicting statements, what overrides the other?
So yes, I get you.
Okay.
So There are three methods of adding that, and basically whichever rule comes last carries the day. For example, if I say body background color gray, and then I come back here and say body background color yellow. So when the rules are processed, the first rule will be applied, but then when we get to the second rule, it's now applied, so it overrides the first rule. So in this case, we expect our body to be yellow because yellow is the last rule that was applied. So if we refresh, see our page is yellow. But if we get rid of this duplicate rule and we refresh, it means the only rule applying to body is the first one. So that's what carries the day. Also, just a point to note, rules that we define inside the document, so rather the ones we call inline, they actually carry the day too, compared to the ones that we have inside the style sheet. So the inline CSS rules they have a higher priority than the ones we define inside the style sheet. Or another way to look at it is we import our style sheet on line 8, but then when we get to line 11, a different rule is applied. So does that answer your question?
Very much so.
Yeah. Anyone else with any question? So HTML documents, HTML and CSS they're defined standards. Hello, sorry. Did someone have a question? Like I was saying, HTML and CSS are quite wide and there's so much you can do. And we can't really talk about all of the elements or all of the style attributes, but luckily there's a way you can find documentation on everything else and everything you'll probably need for that. There are probably hundreds of thousands of HTML elements, and some of them you'll probably just need them, use them when you need them. For example, when you're doing an image, that's when you need to use the image element. So if you need for reference, you can have a look at one of the sites currently there. For HTML, you can look at MDN.
Which one?
I'm sharing a link for HTML. So depending on your needs, you can have a look at developer.mozilla.org. You can find any other HTML attributes that you might need to use. The same applies to CSS. You can find lots of style sheets and elements that you can use for CSS. But the concept is the same. All tags in HTML follow the same standard. They all have attributes. The structure of CSS is the same. So you can always use whichever style you want to use depending on the kind of page you're designing.
how do you deal with the page layout in terms of if you want to fit it or like?
Sorry?
You also have like a distinction between the web and the mobile.
So in theory, browsers don't really matter whether they're web or they're mobile, but how you manage to achieve different results is you can use different styles for different platforms. There's a CSS tag for @media. So once you start using advanced CSS, you'll notice that there's a media component that you can use to style for, say, screen sizes. So you can have a tag like if I wanted to, say, design a screen for fonts, I'll probably do something like this. So media, you can use a CSS rule called media only screen, and then I say the max width of the screen. So most font screens have a screen size of less than 600 pixels. So I can say if the screen is less than 600 pixels, in other words, it's a font, make the background color light blue. So if we save this and go to our browser, let me just switch tabs, share screen. So if you go to this and refresh, the background is still gray. But if you make it mobile, you can do that somewhere here. But if you make it mobile, you see that now we have a green, light blue background. So that's how you can apply different styles for say mobile screens. You'll need to use the media tag, media attribute of CSS. Does that answer your question?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you. And if you play around with the size of this, if you go beyond 600 pixels, you see the style stops working. It only works for screens less than 600 pixels, so mobile screens basically. But if you get to a tablet, you can switch. You can use, if you get to an iPad, say an iPad which is not a font screen, it's still green. But if you get to Pixel 2, which is a font, now the background style applies, which we defined here. Dennis, which link has a 4:4?
Okay, the link you just shared, I think it's let me just confirm.
The developer.mozilla.
Yeah, sure.
They seem to just make sure you've copied them correctly.
Okay, let me try once more. But I got it right. Let me try once more.
Okay. So basically, when we start showing the results of our models and present that, we'll be designing a lot of web pages like this. And the good thing is you need to understand how the page will look like in advance so that you know how to style it, how to structure it, and all that. But the concept still remains. we'll always be putting elements and giving the element styles. Yeah.
So, Rogers, if you
Yes.
look at where we're from, the visualization
Yeah.
of the other results, because
Yeah.
for example, if you do coding in a notebook and you
Yeah.
visual,
Yeah.
it maybe it takes this number of pixels and this and that. So you have to first go now on the page, have that in mind, and first put that part for it and design where that visual will be. So you have
Yes. So at this point, we are just designing how the visual will look. Hello.
I can hear you.
Yeah. So I'm saying at this point, you are just designing how the visual will look by remembering we have our notebooks. So in the next class, we'll be talking about how to get our notebooks hosted somewhere. And then in the class after that, we'll probably see how to join that, whatever we've hosted, and actually bring it to the user interface that we've designed.
Okay.
Yeah, but we'll need to keep learning, practicing about HTML, just so we are comfortable with all the styling and all the designing when we start to show our model.
Okay.
For those of us who've worked with visualization before, you'll actually notice that if you give someone data in a CSV file, it's a lot harder to make sense of it. But if you visualize it in a manner that they can actually see it and understand at a single glance, it's much easier for people to consume data when it's presented in a manner that's visually easy to understand, or basically pleasing visually. So that's why we are starting out with the visualization and designing of the web page and how it looks and how it fits. And then we will progress from there. Tim, do we have anyone with that question or anything?
Yeah. So Rogers, you have prepared some assignments for them?
For now, what we'd probably need is, so we'd probably need to go look at the developer documentation on Mozilla, just look at all the HTML tags that are there and what they do. And from that, you can come up with a rough HTML page, whatever you want to come up with. Just get some HTML together and apply some style to it. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The point is to get comfortable with HTML and CSS so that when we actually get to our model, we are not focusing more on that. Now we can just keep applying it.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so this part of data science is always about practice. So, and this where now we talk about data finding a face. So it's about your creativity and the templates that you choose to use when you're deploying the models that make it a bit more powerful in communicating attributes of the data you're representing. Yeah. All right. So next week, Rogers, same time.
Next week, same time. So next week, we won't be focusing a lot on the HTML. So we'll get into a lot of Python and basically just designing systems so that we see how we can design a system to host our model and still communicate with the web page like this.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Rogers. So, any question from anyone?
I think mine's just a comment.
Yeah.
Maybe I think the guys in this team have gone through quite a number of stages, and what you've been doing is mostly back-end development. But now I think this course is now what every customer or user will face, and most of them want to see the result, not what happened in the background. So it's good. But I like this.
Thank you.
Rogers, are you going to be using which one? Which platform? Django or Flask?
We'll just determine as we go along. There are many other frameworks we definitely won't be using Django.
Okay.
It's the learning curve is steep. There's a lot going on. Yeah, so chances are we might use something like Flask or Fast API, basically any of the lighter frameworks.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much. And maybe to emphasize the point where you see that the end users are interested in seeing what that's not codes that they don't understand. I can testify that we have quite a number of people who come here like preaching, that provided you don't have a product where a person can see and appreciate, you can't say a product. There's nothing you can say. You are very good at coding, what kind of, but you cannot present the package. There is no way you can say it. It's very, very important.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Karibu. Welcome.
Yeah. So we had a few guys who joined in later. Maybe you may introduce yourselves for the sake of Rogers. And also Edison. There's Fiona, Dennis, and there's James. Fiona, we are waiting. Introduce yourselves. You haven't introduced yourselves, you came in late.
Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Fiona. I just completed the introduction to data science class with predictive. I guess we're finishing up on this class as well, and it was nice going through this session. Looking forward to more.
Thank you.
Dennis.
Hi guys. My name is Dennis.
Hi.
I've been working with predictive for the last, say, 2 years. I'm a graduate of BSc Actuarial from Maseno University, and I have a certificate in data science from Massachusetts. And I'd love to gain more from these webinars, and of course, get to learn more practical stuff on the industry that's more current and relevant. So I'm so much into this, and I'd love to interact with you guys and see even more. Thank you so much.
All right. Karibu. And then Eric.
Hello, Eric Gitonga here. Just went through the Intro to Data Science last year and currently taking the newer cohorts through the same. Also looking forward to seeing more of the end user's perspective as opposed to the back end that we've been focusing on.
Okay. All right. So I think that's it. Rogers, thanks for your time. And
Thank you.
you did share the notes, so we already gave it. I hope all of you have got these notes. If not, I'll ask Alice
I'll
to.
share the slides.
We already have the slides.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
If you can.
Yes, Ike I'll forward to you.
Okay, please. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. In Nairobi, just saw the news with the Uhuru announcing the lockdown is still on. So don't delay. Don't delay, home. He's added another 21 days.
You are not alone.
Yeah. Okay, guys, enjoy it and take care. Okay, bye.
Rogers, sorry. Oh, he's out.